Mr. Alan Dunn, you are running for County Council, District 4. Why don't we start out by you telling me a little bit about yourself? How long have you been here in Clinton County?
Born and raised here in Clinton County, grew up on the eastern side of the county in the district that I represent. Went to school at Clinton Central, graduated there in 1989. It doesn't seem like it's been that long ago. Still live within a few miles of where I grew up. And I'm a member of a family farm along with my dad and my uncle and my cousin. And so I'm a full-time farmer, part-time council member.
And why did you decide to get into politics?
You know, that's a great question, and I think about it even now because as my boys grow up, I have two sons, ages 11 and 6, and I really encourage them even to this day or even today to get involved and give back somehow to the community that's being so good to them. We're really fortunate to live where we do. I've always felt that way. And there's lots of ways to give back. People do it in their own way that they're comfortable with, but I've always had an interest in politics, and so that was something that was kind of a natural for me, was to try to give back through service, you know, in an elected capacity.
So in addition to that wanting to serve, why specifically did you decide to run for another term on the county council?
Well, I enjoy doing it, first of all. It's something that I find very rewarding. It sort of fits my personality in that I'm very much a numbers-oriented person. Being a farmer, you deal with on a daily basis, you know, budgets, factoring in costs of production, you know, sales prices. You're working with numbers all the time. It's also maybe a natural fit that as a farmer, you're a large taxpayer. Farmland in Clinton County overall encompasses about 50% of the tax base. In my district, the Clinton Central School District area, it's more like 2/3 of the tax base is agricultural and farmland oriented. So it was just sort of a natural fit for me with my interest, my I guess interest in numbers, but also my interest in making sure that the dollars that our farm pays into the county are spent wisely.
Got it. Now I want to ask specifically about some of your recent experience on the council. Your opponent, Richelle Lutz, has said that the county council hasn't been as thoughtful in recent years as it could or should be in establishing priorities and managing the county's budget. So do you think her characterization is fair, or do you think that the council has in fact been thoughtful in its appropriations?
Well, I don't think I could disagree anymore with that statement, and I'll say this for why. Thoughtful doesn't always mean that you're doing something proactive. Sometimes in our position, local government is often reacting to what is given to us by the state. And in our case, thoughtful is how do you react to the imposition of property tax caps that take away millions of dollars of tax revenue from local government. Thoughtful is how do you reshuffle spending priorities. If you're looking for thoughtful to be new spending ideas, new spending agendas, new buildings purchase, new land purchase, well, we aren't in a position to do that. But if thoughtful means we made it through a really tough time without having to let people go, if we made it through a really tough time without seeing any impact to taxpayer services, then that's where I think we have been extraordinarily successful. My time on the council began in January of 2007. It was in 2008 that the General Assembly changed the rules to the game with the imposition of the property tax cap system. We have been chasing our tail, so to speak, ever since that time, because it was immediately followed by the Great Recession of 2009, which slashed our income tax revenue by over 10%. It was going on and on until culminating in this last year with the elimination of the inheritance tax, which took another $100,000 out of the council's budget. So we have been just continually having to readjust spending priorities to an ever seemingly shrinking revenue stream. And so I consider that to have been, for no more impact than we've had on the taxpayer, a tremendous job by our council.
Speaking of shrinking revenue streams then, let's talk about the 2014 budget. It's my understanding that the state ordered Clinton County to cut about $710,000 from the 2014 budget that was passed last year. My question is, if the council has been aware since 2008 that revenue streams have been drying up, why was such a drastic cut necessary? What was it that the council missed?
Well, I don't think we missed anything. It was a bigger cut than we anticipated, although I do think we anticipated that there could be a cut. much of the information we submit to the state at the time of our budget process in September and October is based on estimates. And by the time the state looks at it at the beginning of the following year, many of those estimates have turned into real numbers. And in this case, that is really where the discrepancy between what we expected and what was the reality happened. But I think that this was the first time. We've had instances over the last few years where we've had to do cuts, and we always had a place to go. We shifted something to another fund. We had a luxury item that we were able to just cut out of the budget. Mm-hmm. This was the first time we felt like we had cut to the bone, and we weren't sure where to go. So when we got to the point we cut everything that we thought we could cut, we sent it to the state. We decided to more or less wait to see how the real numbers came in versus projections, and then we would make the final cuts at the time that, at the beginning of the year, as we ended up having to do. So in this instance, we got some good news and some bad news. The bad news was the cut was a little bit bigger than we wanted it to be. The good news was that we did have some things come in and a little bit better than we projected that gave us a little bit of wiggle room that allowed the cuts we had to make to be targeted on areas that didn't have any impact on the taxpayer.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Now, specifically, you mentioned that estimates became real numbers, but the initial budget that the council passed was nearly $229,000 over anticipated revenue. Those anticipated...
No, let me correct you. It was
okay.
$229,000 under anticipated revenue. We submitted it to the state in a negative
right.
situation. Yeah, hoping that some of the estimates and projections we were making would improve, or mm-hmm. that we were overly aggressive in being, well, maybe I should say overly conservative in some of the revenues we expected. Or, for instance, at the time that we did that, we were making a projection on our insurance budget, and we were projecting an increase that was far in excess of the way it really turned out. But not knowing what it was, we thought it was prudent to estimate high, and then hope the numbers came in below, than to estimate low to give the appearance of a balanced budget, mm-hmm. only to then have the numbers come in, higher in actuality. So we originally submitted a budget that was $229,000 below.
Got it.
Well, what then happened was that the state did not allow. There were some technicalities there on how budget levies are calculated, mm-hmm. and the levy is the amount of money that a county is allowed, or a local government is allowed to raise via property taxes. There are different ways to calculate the levy. Anyone who files an income tax return knows that you file the traditional way, and then they have this thing called the alternative minimum tax, and that's the government's way of making sure that they get at least a minimum amount of tax from a taxpayer. There's a similar mechanism when it comes to calculating the levy at the state. We calculated it one way. The state has an alternative method that they calculated it that allowed us to collect less money. When they used their form, which is what they ended up approving, mm-hmm. that allowed the money that we were to collect from property taxes to be smaller than we anticipated. And so the real difference between the 229 and the 710 was that they were allowing us to collect less revenue. So it was, again, another instance where the county was being challenged to do more with less.
Mm-hmm. Got it. I do want to transition a little bit and ask you about another issue that's faced the council. I don't think there's any secret that there's been conflict between the council and the Board of Commissioners recently. How do you think that conflict should be resolved? And are there any other issues that you think are being overlooked as a result of that conflict?
That's difficult because calling it conflict is, I guess that's fair to say in that we don't agree. But one thing that doesn't get said is that we've worked together on a lot of things too. Conflict is there's no question we view the world differently, and that we've had differences of opinion on certain issues, but we've also worked hand in hand on several other issues too. I guess I would say this: we view the council views our authority over the budget very seriously, and we feel that. Particularly those of us that have been on the council for a long time, that we have a very good handle of the historical nature of our budget. We're aware of the shrinking revenue. We're aware of the fact that how much we've had to cut. I think our opinion has been with these brand new commissioners that at the beginning of their term had a combined 2 years of experience, that maybe there wasn't that awareness of the budget history that the council has. And I think we have simply wanted the commissioners to recognize the budgetary authority and knowledge and expertise of the council more than we feel that they maybe have. Having said that, we've worked through a lot of stuff here in the last 6 months. We had some good battles over the insurance, but at the end of the day, we came up with a good plan for the employees, and we came up with a plan that fit in the budget that the council wanted. We had battles over issues of, whether the county attorney should be on the insurance. But at the end of the day, we did get him on in a way that the council felt comfortable with inside the budget. So having a disagreement is not a bad thing. It forced us to talk. It forced us to be creative on how we dealt with some of these things. And I guess ultimately I would say the winner was the taxpayer, because we have done these things with as little spending as possible, which was the council's objective.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Another component, in addition to working alongside the commissioners, the county council has to work alongside other local agencies, including the city of Frankfort. Perhaps you could explain a little bit of your track record working alongside the rest of Clinton County.
Well, we do work alongside. I think that's the key. We don't direct or impose or dictate or anything like that. We've had, I think, an excellent relationship with the administration, and just as good a relationship with the city council, although I cannot think, maybe the exception is we worked hand in hand with them on the Stellar Grant application. There were some things that, to be a strong application, were going to require the city, or the county, to do some things with our parking lot that was inside of the Stellar area, and we worked with the administration and came up with a plan on how we were going to do that, and it required the council to work with the city council and the administration on how we were going to fund some necessary improvements. We worked hand in hand with the administration on Ivy Tech. We've worked with them on, and the city council on the golf course issue. That's been a particularly challenging one. It's been a little bit like having to hold your nose and eat your lima beans. It's not something we've all wanted to do, but we know we have an asset that we need to do something with, because if you don't do anything with it, it will cost us way more than dealing with it proactively. So we've reached out to them, they've reached out to us, and I think we've done a very good job of communicating to each other.
Now, I know we've covered a lot of ground here already, but I do want to ask, is there anything else specific that you think the people of Clinton County should know going into this election in particular about how their local government operates, or what obstacles might lie ahead?
Well, I really, honestly, truly believe that we've taken our revenues down to about as low as they could go. I really am optimistic looking into the future. I think that we've gotten our budget balanced down at a point that from now on we should be able to grow. With the announcement of ConAgra coming to the community, we've started. We've had a philosophy my entire time on the council, and it certainly wasn't one that I started. It was one that I got to be a part of, that the leadership at the time had implemented, and that is this commitment to building infrastructure, and that, if you'll pardon the expression, if you build it, they will come. And it started with investing in the infrastructure of water, sewer, electric, out to the west of the industrial park. That turned out to be critical in landing ConAgra. We've invested resources in the airport. Again, turned out to be critical in landing ConAgra. They flew into the airport multiple times, and each time they met with county leaders, the first thing they did was compliment our airport. It was very important in getting them to come. And lastly, of the trifecta was Ivy Tech was instrumental in getting them to select Frankfort over other locations. They heard from Chancellor David Baith, who spoke to the cooperative nature of the city and county. He spoke to their willingness to work with ConAgra on training programs. It all came together on that one project, some of this forward-looking investment in our future kind of things. So I think that the future is very bright, because we've gone through the low times. We've balanced the budget at this kind of reduced income level, and now we have, for the first time, prospects that things are going to happen that are going to start turning that revenue stream back up. When we add 200 new workers, we're going to add income, personal income tax from the county to the revenue streams. We're going to add assessed value to the property tax books. So things look very, very promising going forward. I know that I don't want to share too much, but I know there's 2 or 3 other potential developments in the works that hopefully we are fortunate enough to land that would start to really get us some momentum here locally. So I think the future looks bright. I think that one thing that needs to be talked about, and I know that if I were a citizen taxpayer, it would be very confusing if I'm reading your newspaper and I see one day that the council is being forced to spend $700,000 or cut $700,000, and the next day I see that they're investing in Ivy Tech. I would want to know, well, how can you do both? I think one thing that I would like to try to do as a personal goal over another term is maybe be more proactive in reaching out to the taxpaying community and explaining how their local government works. And the answer to that question or that scenario I just posed is that there are different funds that are available for different uses. One fund is in a really tight situation. Another fund does have monies available for economic development projects like Ivy Tech. So the public needs to be educated on that. I think some of the headlines on your newspaper would make a lot more sense if we could do some sort of a community outreach like that.
If that makes sense. I did want to ask, those 2 to 3 developments that you mentioned, are they on the scale of ConAgra? Would you say that they're larger or
Well,
smaller?
I hesitate to say anything.
Okay.
I probably shouldn't have said what I did because there are other sites involved. They're going
Okay.
through their due diligence process. Frankfurt is one of the locations they're looking at. I guess the point I'm trying to make is that Frankfurt is a buzz in the state of Indiana now. We are doing things the right way. We are a destination that people are looking at, and so I think that the future is very bright. I see some big things coming for us in the next few years.
So no handshakes yet on
No
this.
handshakes yet, no.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Mr. Dunn. We're looking forward to hearing more from you, especially with the
Happy to
forum
do it.
coming up in April.
Great. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.